The movie begins by showing us Peter, who's looking outside his apartment window when a bright light flashes across the sky and crashes somewhere near his house. Suddenly, a series of shots start being fired at the people staring at the phenomenon, causing mayhem. Then all of a sudden, Peter awakens from the consecutive nightmare that he's been having for weeks and sits up on his bed. His wife Alice asks him if he's had another bad dream and tells him to see someone about them because she and their daughters were starting to get worried. But Peter replies that he's gonna figure it out on his own. The next morning, Peter gets dressed to leave for work and finds his youngest daughter playing under the table. When she asks him to join her, he tells her that he has to go to work but promises to take her to the pier later. He then says bye to Alice, who informs him that they'll be meeting their friends the next day to celebrate her promotion. He heads out of his apartment and walks to his job, where he works as an engineer, and while fixing one of the machines, he gets distracted by a vision of his bloody hand and neglects to watch the machine, which short circuits. David, his boss and friend, approaches Peter and asks him if he's been sleeping well, and although Peter assures him that he has been, David suggests that he should get checked out at a psychiatric clinic and provides him with a number. After finishing his shift, Peter goes to the store to return a cable and gets a vivid vision of an attack by aliens. When he wakes up, he finds himself passed out on the storeroom floor and rushes out of there. Distracted by the constant visions that he was getting, Peter completely forgets about the promise that he made to his family. Back at the apartment, Alice puts two disappointed daughters to bed after their father didn't show up as promised. Although Alice tries to apologize on behalf of Peter, Hannah, their older daughter, refuses to accept it, saying that she shouldn't make excuses for him. Later, Peter gets home with a telescope that he had bought in hand after seeing strange lights in the sky. He finds his wife upset at him and pushes him to seek help after he tells her what happened to him at work. Peter explains the reservation that he has about hospitals, convinced that they would tell him that it was all in his head. The next morning, he wakes up after having the same nightmare to the sound of his children laughing in the living room, and when he tries to join them, Lucy puts on her headphones and walks out of the room. As an apology, Peter fixes Lucy's broken teddy bear and gets it to talk again. A few minutes later, he walks up to his wife and tells her that he just scheduled an appointment to see a doctor after work, which makes Alice really happy. And just as he promised, Peter heads to the psychiatric clinic and sits in the waiting area for his name to be called. The man that was sitting next to him asks if he was there because he had trouble sleeping, and Peter confirms the man's suspicions. The man then continues to describe the lights in the sky and tells him that he thinks that something is coming, and this dude really looked paranoid, and he tells Peter that doctors didn't want them to be suspicious, so they consistently erased their memories. Peter watches the man strangely as he is called off by one of the nurses, and changing his mind, he leaves the hospital and heads straight home. When he walks in, his wife asks him how it went, but he tells her the truth about how he left before speaking to a doctor. She was really annoyed by her husband's stubbornness and tells him to get ready for the dinner party, as they were about to have a little shindig with their friends. That night, the couple's friends gather at their house, talking and laughing, but Peter spends the majority of the night looking at the stars through his telescope. When the party was almost over, Peter's neighbor comes over to speak to him about his new strange behavior, when suddenly the sky lights up with hundreds of ships falling to Earth. Alice and her friend come out to see what the strange light noises were, and Alice gets a look from her husband. There seems to be a few minutes of quiet, then suddenly, the whole city is hit with a wave that explodes all the windows in the city, sending people flying across the room. And as soon as the explosion starts, the parents start running around looking for their kids. Peter finds Lucy hiding under the bed and tells Alice to stay with her while he gets Hannah from their neighbor's house. When Peter and his neighbor Ray couldn't find their daughters in the house, Peter suggests that they look in the elevators because it's Hannah's favorite place to be. When they search the dysfunctional elevators, they find their daughters huddled up together, scared at the sudden darkness. After getting the children out, the group heads back up the stairs to the apartment, and suddenly they hear sounds coming from one of the stairwells, and Peter goes to check it out. Cracking the door a little open, he peers outside, only to see heavily armored humanoid-like creatures murdering everyone in their path. Closing the back door, Peter rushes them back up the stairs, and after he reunites the family, Peter takes Alice aside and tells her that the creatures from his dreams are roaming outside. Panicking, she asks him what to do next, and thinking back to the flashes that he had, he tells her that his memories were in order, but he thinks that they should get to the factory. Then suddenly, the couple hears loud shooting outside the door and decide to barricade themselves inside. Moving the shelves and couch onto the door, they tried to fortify their place, but the forceful bangings that were coming from the outside were too difficult to keep at bay. Lucy remembers that she left her toy under the table and runs back to get it, despite Hannah trying to stop her. When the assailant stops pushing at the door and starts breaking through the wall, Alice and Peter run to the room where they had hidden their daughter, but find Lucy missing. The alien forcibly enters the house and finds Lucy hiding under the table and staring at her as if he was curious. It extends its hand forward to her face, but before it could touch her, Peter charges it and takes away its gun. When he tries to shoot the alien, the gun is jammed and wouldn't fire, and the alien then charges Peter and gets him to the ground. Using its knife, it tries to stab Peter, but Alice comes to the rescue, being the masked alien unconscious. The couple then gather their kids and try to get them to the rooftop to avoid the aliens, and while going ahead to scout the area, Peter finds their neighbors hiding out. The group then goes to the edge of the roof and is shocked to see their entire city decimated. On the roof of the distant building, they see dozens of people trapped waiting for help when a ship blows them up. The group realizes that they can't stay on the roof, but can go down the stairs because it was swarming with aliens, so instead, Peter suggests that they use a cleaning trolley to lower themselves down. After going a few floors down, the pulley holding the trolley starts to break, obviously, forcing them to get off and hide in one of the apartments. While Peter tries to figure out how to bypass the biometric system of the gun that he had stolen from the alien, Ray and Samantha approach them and tell them that they need to leave the city and find somewhere safe. Peter suggests that they go to the factory that he works at because the basement is like a fortress, and Alice suggests that they could take the tunnels to the factory and the entrance was only a few blocks away. While discussing this, an explosion hits the spot that Ray was standing on, incinerating him immediately. The consecutive gunshots also kill Samantha and her daughter, but Peter and his family manage to escape before they're gunned down. While they hide in the hallway, Peter figures out how to work the gun and uses it to shoot 3 of the aliens that had come after them. The couple manage to get out of the building and start heading to the tunnel entrance, and although they find it, they were seen by one of the ships. Right as all 4 of them make it through, the entrance of the tunnel collapses from the explosion, severely injuring Alice. Peter carries his wife through the tunnels, trying to make it to the factory as fast as possible. After following them down the building, it finally catches up to them, surprising them in the tunnels. Peter fights the alien and manages to disarm it, slamming its masked head into the concrete repeatedly. Peter holds the gun and yells at the alien, asking why he had come to Earth. Now that its helmet was crushed, the alien takes it off and reveals that it was just a human, and shocked by what was in front of him, he asks the man who he was, but he doesn't get any answers. Peter hears his daughter call out to him from behind and tell him that Alice has passed out, and having no other choice, he forces the strange man to pick up his wife and carry her to the factory. When they finally get there, Peter knocks on one of the gates and a group of armed men open the door, his boss David being one of them. The group rushes inside and closes the doors just as they see a brigade of ships heading their way. While the family watches, the doctors who were supposed to give Alice care start to electrocute her, and this really pisses off Peter. When he fights to get to her, David stops him and tells him that they're doing diagnostics, and David explains that the attack had been expected for a long time, which was why they were ready for it. While the soldiers drag the alien to get rid of him, the doctors tell Peter that there was nothing that they could do for Alice because her system has shut down. But suddenly, the man from space yells out that he'll be able to save Peter's wife if they spared his life. Taking the chance on the stranger, Peter sends his daughters away with David and remains behind with the alien and his wife. Once they were alone, the alien asks for a knife and cuts open Alice's wound, while Peter watches in horror at what he reveals. Shocked at seeing an electric system inside of organs, Peter asks the man what is inside of her. The alien realizes that Peter didn't really have any clue what he and his wife were, and saving the awkward conversation for later, the man tells Peter that Alice needs an alternative source of power which he can provide. He tells Peter to make a 6-inch incision on his chest, which would reveal a synthetic form of weird organs instead of flesh and bone. Peter sat there baffled, his whole world shattered by this new revelation as the stranger connected him to his wife with a wire. While Peter was unconscious, it's revealed that he and his wife, along with everyone on the planet, were synthetic AI beings that were actually built by humans. Through time, they developed a consciousness that frightened humans and forced them to start a war against the AIs. After months of war, the synths managed to kill as many humans as they could and forced the rest to flee onto a different planet. Peter and Alice had found their daughters on the street and adopted them as their own. After rebuilding the city, the synths created a system to wipe out their memories so they didn't have to remember the war. But some chose to keep theirs in case the humans ever returned. When Peter wakes up, he sees the stranger sitting across him with the wire connecting him and Alice that was keeping her alive. When Peter asks the man why he hadn't killed them both when he was passed out, the man explains that it was his grandparents, the synths, that chased off the planet. And the human race had fled to Mars and was living in colonies, and it took humans 50 years to gather the resources that they needed to return back to Earth. They had learned that the synths were monsters, but he had realized that once he met them, that was only one side of the story. The human explains that he wasn't willing to kill children and families, and once Alice wakes up, the human, who would introduce himself as Miles, helps them get away so they can find their daughters. Shooting their way through, Peter and Alice make it to the train just in time to be reunited with Hannah and Lucy. Although the humans entered the station, the train had already started its journey to safety, and Peter and David stand aside watching the devastated people, crying for all the people that they lost. David tells Peter that just like him, all those people had their memories wiped to be free of the guilt of what they did, but now they must all remember because the war had begun all over again. Returning to his seat, Peter and his family watch the sunrise as the train finally leaves the tunnels. And that is how this thrilling sci-fi movie comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed the recap. Make sure to leave me a like, leave a comment, also subscribe to my channel. I love you guys so much and I promise to see you on my next recap. Bye!